Do you want to start by giving a bit about your background and what your childhood was like?
Yeah. When I was younger, I had a fairly abusive upbringing with a lot of abuse.
Okay. What sort of abuse?
A lot of physical abuse as well as neglect. More so on the physical side.
Abuse and neglect. So like the only sort of time you were getting attention is when you were being sort of attacked, sort of thing. Is that what you mean?
Um, it depends really. At times it was confusing because the abuser may be nice one day and then the next day it might be beating for whatever reason something small.
Do you know your abuser?
Yes, it was my one of my parents.
One of your friends. Okay. Sorry to hear that, by the way. Do you what happened to them in the end?
Uh, Nothing, I guess.
Do you still see them?
Nope.
You had quite a difficult childhood. Do you think that played a part in developing narcissism?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I spoke with a couple of psychologists, and they pointed to that that's a big trigger. So during the years when I was being abused, pretty young, up to maybe 5, 6, up to maybe 11, 12. That's a key developmental stage. So if you're being kind of severely and perfectly abused, that does interfere with your development and with your personality. That's where most people that have personality disorders, whether it's narcissism, the ages, young ages, 5, 6, up to 8, 9, your brain is developing your key components to your personality and other things. So generally, when people have personality disorders, there has been some sort of event or events during that kind of time frame that has disrupted that. Usually it's from neglect or abuse. So
of course, you were diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, which you now feel was a bit of a false diagnosis. Can you say a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So generally, when I was young, I was fairly rambunctious. As boys are, they're very busy, they're very active. Um, my parent at the time, due to their own mental health issues, was struggling to basically cope and deal with raising a boy, which is some people find that difficult. So that kind of turned to abuse and just kind of neglect, more or less, to try and deal with me. So with the times that they weren't able to kind of control me in public or other situations like that. They had me diagnosed with ADD. They kind of overplayed how hyperactive I was, or this or that, to get me put on Ritalin, which is I would only describe it as, when you're a child, it's almost like a sedative. I felt very very dull, very kind of drugged, like a zombie almost, in a sense. So kind of just sitting there mindlessly, and that was easier for them to kind of control me and get them to do what they want. So I think that was more so a diagnosis of convenience for them, because it helped them at least control me in a sense. But now, as I'm an adult and older, I don't show any of the signs of ADD or ADHD. I'm not hyperactive. I'm pretty calm. If you knew me on the street, you would say I'm one of the calmest people. And that's people do grow out of it, yes, but from the time when I left that person's care, I was completely calm and didn't act out. And a lot of children that end up acting out is because they're having issues at home. So it's kind of like a double-edged blade, right? I'm acting out because she's abusing me, and then she's abusing me because I act out.
Okay. And was that sexual?
No, not from her. There were times that I'd be maybe like 7 or 8, and she'd be sleeping until maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. We wouldn't have food. I'd be getting myself up to go to school in the morning at 7, 8 years old. Go to school with no lunch, no clean clothes, not being bathed. So pretty much just looking after myself at a very young age, and that predators are everywhere in the world. Whether it's the person living next door or someone that you don't realize is a predator, they're everywhere. So people like this tend to have a good eye for vulnerable people, people that look like it would be easy to get to control, more or less. I had someone in the neighborhood that was picking up on I obviously wasn't washed, didn't have food. I had a destructive home life that kind of befriended me, and then molested me for several years. So on the flip side, yeah, my parent maybe didn't do anything to cause that, but not being there, when I get home, being visibly distraught or upset because they're sleeping or whatever, like that holds responsibility. You have to, as a parent, be cognizant of what's going on in your child's life. So if you're not involved with that, you wouldn't know. So that kind of opened the door for that to at least continue on for as long as it did.
Of course. How did you eventually realize that you had psychopathy and narcissistic personality disorder?
So when I was, the abuse for me started when I was fairly young. I can remember, at 4.5, 5 years old, misbehaving, and I would be, put into a dog cage for several hours because, I was, she couldn't deal with me. So when that kind of progressed, like I started having, well, I guess, in hindsight, I can see where it would have started, and I can see signs, but I wouldn't have known at the time. But I was hurting animals and stuff when I was very young.
What animals?
Small animals, squirrels, stuff like that. Anything I could kind of find.
How'd you catch a squirrel?
Just like throwing rocks at them.
And you hit them?
But, be sneaky about it. Wait behind something, wait from not seeing them. Clock them in the head with a rock and smash them with it.
And she put your carer put you in a dog cage as well, you said?
Yeah, that happened a couple times. I remember I would, cry because I, needed to go to the bathroom. She wouldn't let me out. It was one of those dog cages that had almost like a spring-activated clamp to open it up. And being like 5 years old, you don't have the finger strength to do that, let alone as an adult, it's kind of difficult enough sometimes. But yeah, so I got put in there. So that's when, as an adult, I could see that it started. I knew when I was very young that I was much more different than other kids. Probably around 8 or 9, I had
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I had a very difficult time making friends. I had a difficult time interacting with other people. Simply because I, didn't really have empathy. I didn't have, a lot of other things. So, maybe a kid would be, playing in break their leg, for example, and, all the other kids are around freaking out because his bone's poking out, and I'm kind of like looking in intrigue and kind of, watching and kind of enjoying the moment. So I kind of, it kind of clicks in like, well, why is it I'm not disturbed by that? And then, as I grew older, it started, turning into being very curious about certain things, watching gore videos, watching beheading videos, torturing videos, all that sort of stuff. And that persisted for many years. So, when I would say like 15, 16, I kind of knew something wasn't quite right. And then probably by, 18, 19, starting to go to college and learning about, various things, it kind of started clicking in my head, okay, this kind of makes sense, and all the puzzle pieces kind of fit. So I would say probably by the time I was 20, I kind of understood that that this is probably what I had, that it made sense, all the kind of pieces fit together. And then, going on in life, learning more about certain conditions, like, okay, no, this makes sense, that makes sense, this doesn't quite make sense. And, then speaking with some psychologists and then getting diagnosed by a couple of them, it was not really like a shock or anything. It was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what I figured. That checks out. So,
Where did you find beheading videos?
there's a lot of sites that you can, well, not as many anymore, but there's a lot of sites. I don't know if you want me to list them or not, but
Do you still look for them?
As of recently, no, I've stopped watching them. I find with how would I put it? When people have kind of they get bored easily, or they have certain inclinations to do certain things, or they have certain fantasies. One of the things that I found is if you kind of fuel that by watching videos, it eventually turns into continuing to act or doing the thing. So, the way that I would describe it is, think of me like an alcoholic. As an alcoholic, I wouldn't go into a bar because you're surrounded by, alcohol, right? That is a temptation. So, by watching certain things or watching certain types of pornography, it kind of, piques your interest, and then after a while, that becomes boring, and then you move on to the next thing.
An alcoholic's an alcoholic though because they've got addicted to drinking. You've never cut anyone's head off, right?
Correct.
Or anything close to that, I would hope. You could be honest.
Animals, yes.
And you've cut an animal's head off?
Yes, correct.
What animal?
It was a bird.
What did you use to cut his head off?
My hands. I just ripped his head off.
Oh, yeah, like popped it.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less.
Weird feeling, right?
Fish.
Some squirrels. What do you mean ish? Harder to get the head off?
For what?
Sorry?
What did you say? I didn't hear.
It's squirrel. It's harder to pop the head off, right? It's
Thicker
Yeah,
skin.
you have to use a knife.
Yeah, you can't. You need like real. Can you describe your conditions?
Yeah. So I have narcissism. That one kind of came as a surprise because I didn't think I was a narcissist. But generally, a narcissist wouldn't, realize that they're a narcissist because they, truly believe in their head, that they're better than other people. So it's, so yes, I have narcissism. I have a attachment disorder, as well as, a psychopath is not really, it's not like a diagnosis per se. I thought I had antisocial personality disorder for a while because that was kind of the only clinical, place that I would fit in. But I've spoken with my psychologist, and the consensus is I'm not a sociopath. I don't have antisocial personality disorder because I'm able to function within society. You'd have no idea that I am this way. The best way that it can kind of be described is think of kind of like antisocial personality disorder as kind of like the poster child for that kind of behavior and thought process. And then you have different branches that are kind of related, almost like autism. So if I told you had two children that were autistic, and child A has to, is in a wheelchair with a bag to go to the bathroom, has to be fed and bathed, and child 2 might be a savant and could paint you a picture that they saw from 5 years ago, piece by piece, with exact detail. So it's quite different. So they're kind of related, but separate. But yeah, like I said, there's not really any diagnosis of psychopath, but you have people that have higher psychopathic traits. So that's how they would define it. So unofficially diagnosed as a psychopath.
They'll link it, so they'll go, this is going to come across more sarcastic than it is intended. It's not intended sarcastically, but they'll put 2 and 2 together. They'll go, okay, you like your beheadings, you ripped off a few animals' heads. They'll kind of, and then link that with, okay, well, he's got no empathy for animals, early stages. It's essentially putting 2 and 2 together, isn't it? It's undiagnosed, but that is essentially what it is, right? They'll link those things.
That makes sense.
More or less. you know, um, psychological conditions are, updated all the time. They have, I forget what it's called, but they have a couple of books that they go off of for a clinical diagnosis. Stuff gets added, stuff gets removed all the time. So, I would probably sit, thinking maybe, for a couple of years that might get added, who knows? But like I've done some testing. There's like a Robert Hare checklist you can do. I've done a couple other ones, like a PCLR test. Like I'm scoring in the 98th percentile for that. So, but like you'd never guess, because I'm the person walking down the street that smiles at you, is polite with you, never speaks up. I'm quiet. I have a nice house. I have a nice car. I don't.
Yeah, but so did Bundy and Ed Kemp. That's kind of the thing, isn't it? They always say, not that I'm saying you are. I hope you're not a serial killer, but the whole thing is, watch out for the quiet guy. And
what you're describing
well,
is
Jeff Bezos is a quiet guy.
does he rip off heads? I mean, he rips off his workers, but I mean that's not different.
But my point being is, though, that doing something because you're intrigued by it or fascinated or interested in something, and realizing that you have to still conform to society to a degree, right?
yeah.
I understand that I can't do certain things. I understand that I can't rape people, I can't kill people, I can't do this, I can't do that. Like that's normal, societal expectations of people. I like to be in control. Prison is somewhere where I would have no control. So, based on, laws, I don't want to go there. So I'm not going to do something to put myself in that situation.
So is that the only reason that you haven't tried killing a person?
Well, what benefit would there be for me?
You seem to enjoy the killing of animals. So would that not be the
Yeah,
next
that
logical
was
step up?
when I was younger. Sorry?
No, I'm not trying to I'm just saying that would be the next logical step up. That's normally what it is for, not that I'm linking you to a serial killer,
Okay.
but there is.
So here's my question. You've watched pornography, I'm assuming, correct?
On what, sorry?
You've watched pornography, I would guess, right?
Yeah, I've watched more.
Yeah. You like, watching certain things in that? Does that mean you would necessarily partake in everything?
I would 100% partake in what I've seen.
Okay, well, let's think of this then. Do you like watching horror films? Do you like watching, other things of that nature?
I love horror films.
Big fan of slashers.
Well, if you like watching it, but why haven't you done it yourself?
Because there's a difference, right? There's a difference between watching and that. But I've also I love Jason's. I grew up on slashers. I never killed animals. I never pulled off a bird's head. I did do a little bit of butchering and catering, but the animals were killed cleanly and peacefully.
That stuff happened when I was much younger, right?
Of course.
So the way that I would explain it is, sometimes you have impulses, or you have things you'd like to do, or you have a certain kind of thought process. It doesn't mean that you necessarily do it, or follow that. There's tons of people with this condition that haven't done anything, that are, functioning members of society, and then you have a small percentage of them that end up going on doing things, and they end up in jail. So that's the difference. And most people that have this condition or something similar don't seek out therapy. They don't, they don't talk to anyone about it, because it's something that's very hidden within them as a person. So, the amount of people that are probably like this out and about in society is probably much higher than you would imagine, that just don't do anything. It's the type of person that, somebody maybe is driving on a train, or someone got hit by a car or something like that, and they just drive by and don't care to stop, right? Because they don't have any empathy. Someone's dying on the side of the road, like, whatever, someone else will stop it. It's not a big deal. A lot of people do that. And there's a lot of people that won't stop. And if you were to really dig down with that person, and they were to be honest with you, you'd probably realize that they just don't care. They have, they're going to pick up their kid from school, or they're doing this, which they put more, priority on that than helping another person. So there are more people like that.
Some claim that the combination of psychopathy and MPD can make a person particularly dangerous, even more so than someone who's just a psychopath. Would you agree with this assessment?
I mean, to a degree. I mean, I know people that are psychopathic as well as have narcissism are generally a smaller proportion of people that have, similar personality disorders, right? So it's one of the ones that's harder to treat, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it makes them more dangerous. I would say that people that have high psychopathic traits as well as narcissism probably have a higher degree of it than someone that just has narcissism or just has plain Jane psychopathy.
How does
Sorry.
How does being a malignant narcissist affect your romantic relationships?
It really doesn't. I'm able to achieve or do what I want in that department, whether it's finding someone to sleep with, finding someone to be in a relationship with a certain amount of time. So it doesn't, it makes it easier for me, I would almost say.
Do you tell them like up front, like, this is my condition, this is who I am?
No.
Sorry?
No, your camera stuff working.
Is it working now?
Yeah, on my end, it's not doing anything.
Oh, okay. On this end, it's still going. It's all right. How do you think it's affected your career and work life?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
How do you think it's affected your career and work life?
Well, I've been, very successful in life, so, not really a hindrance, but something that's helped me in my work. I've been able to, do certain things at work that, help put me ahead from other people that, I'm not afraid of stepping on people's toes and afraid of throwing people under the bus, kind of get what I needed to kind of get further ahead. So, that doesn't really affected me there. It probably has helped me be more successful.
Can you give us an example of someone that you've stepped over to as as an example?
Yeah. So, someone that I heard in the office was looking at applying for promotion or applying for a new job that I was also eyeing up for. Maybe they didn't notice that I overheard that, or that they were interested. Or they maybe even told me themselves that they're interested, because I don't, generally tell people, what I'm thinking or how I feel about certain things. So, I would just kind of do certain things that would make it obvious of, mistakes they've made recently. So, management maybe notices that, and then when we go for the promotion, who are they going to promote? The guy that's been working well for the last 3 months, or the guy that they just had to deal with a couple fuck ups, in the last 2 months because they've been doing a couple things incorrectly that have just been kind of pointed out. So that's how we get promotions. Or if you work somewhere, a lot of people won't leave a workplace because they they feel committed, or they feel tied to that place, so they don't want to leave to hurt anyone's feelings. I have no problem doing that. I go somewhere for more money, might be stay there for 8 months, 9 months, swap somewhere else because I make more money there. So kind of bouncing around because I get more cash. But a lot of people wouldn't do that because they like their coworkers or they like the environment.
Are you motivated by money?
Yes, very much so.
Even though you do lack certain feelings like empathy, what joy do you get from money?
It's just, you can do what I want. Money lets you control people.
You like to control people?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Depends. It could be emotionally. It could be, being in a situation where, you can do something for that person in the moment, and then, now I have a favor that they need to pay back.
So you collect favors, would you say?
In a sense, maybe not word for word, but I'm not stupid. I know that if I help someone out with cash, and then I ask them to do something for me, that they're pretty quick to jump on it and do it.
Can you give an example of a time that this has happened?
Well, example may be someone was having some financial issues and they couldn't, afford to pay their mortgage for that month because of something happened with their dog or something like that. And I gave them a couple $1,000 to cover the mortgage. But then also I needed some information. We were coworkers at the time. I needed some info on something that I could use to ask for a raise. They were an accountant, so they gave me the spreadsheet for everyone's salary at the work. So I was able to, see where I was on the list, see what other people were making, and then, when it came time for negotiations, I had more of a foothold to get, more money, and I got, I think, like almost $9,000 more a year. And that only cost me $2,000, which they eventually paid back. So really, that's a good trade-off.
Absolutely. If you could have the option to experience guilt or empathy and be normal in that respect, would you do it?
I mean, I don't think so, to be honest. Where I've gone in life, I've gone pretty far. I have a fairly prestigious job. I make a lot of cash. I think if I, would have, had those, abilities, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And it's not something I miss. I kind of look at other people like that as a hindrance. It's kind of funny, to be honest. I don't know, like if someone, it's something that I always find funny is if someone dies and the other people all kind of crowd around them like, oh, I'm sorry for this, and some people will maybe be visibly distraught. Like I find that's hilarious. Like this person has no link to that other person that passed away. Why would they care enough or, show, be visibly distraught for another person? I think that's kind of stupid.
So like if someone admires a celebrity, for example, you mean that kind of link?
No, I can kind of I understand what idolizing someone is. So that's, that would be different. I'm more so talking about, people that empathize with other people.
So like someone that's lost a mum emphasizing someone else that's lost a mum, that sort of thing. You find that you're like, oh, that's funny.
In a sense, yeah. They might sit there and start bonding over there, I think it's because it's not something that I feel or go through, so it's kind of alien to me, and it's kind of funny to watch.
Do you have kids?
Don't really want to discuss that.
Okay. And finally, what do you think the future holds for yourself?
Pretty much whatever I want, more or less. Whenever I really wanted to do something or get something or go somewhere or do anything, I've never not been able to get what I want. So I'm very impulsive and I'm very kind of spur of the moment. So whether I'm sitting at home a week from now, or whether I'm going somewhere to some country, or with COVID it's kind of hard because a lot of stuff was locked down. But pretty much whatever I want. I could be somewhere, in a couple weeks from now in some exotic country or doing something interesting. But depends what I feel like at that time.
Thank you so much for watching. Before you do anything, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Oh, and if you're going to comment before you do anything, please just take a second to think about what you're going to say. I promise it'll go a long way. You can also find me in the links below. My book, my social media, everything is down there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.